The English Channel holds secrets in its depths. Some sink slowly, claimed by time and tide. Others vanish in a single night, leaving only questions that echo across generations. On the 29th of September, 1913, one of history's greatest inventors stepped aboard the SS Dresden, bound for London, and by morning he had disappeared completely. His name was Rudolf Diesel. The engine that bears his name powers our world today, but the mystery of his death remains unsolved. What happened in those dark hours? Was it suicide, murder, or something else entirely? The answer lies compressed between forces we can only begin to understand. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if these history tales fascinate you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The evening unfolds with peculiar precision. Rudolf Diesel dines aboard the Dresden with typical German punctuality, ordering his meal in the first-class saloon where electric lights cast warm pools against polished wood. He is 55 years old, his beard trimmed neat, his suit immaculate despite days of travel. To his dinner companions, he appears composed, even cheerful. He discusses plans for his London meeting with the British Admiralty, scheduled for the morning after his arrival. He mentions technical specifications, fuel efficiency, the future of maritime power. Nothing suggests a man contemplating his final hours. Yet before retiring to his cabin, Diesel makes an unusual request. He asks his companion to wake him at precisely 6:15 in the morning. Not 6, not 6:30, 6:15 exactly. The specificity strikes some as odd, but Diesel has always been a man of exactitude. His entire life's work depends on precise measurements, on compression ratios calculated to the decimal point, on timing measured in milliseconds. In his cabin, alone now, Diesel opens his diary. The leather-bound book contains appointments, calculations, sketches of engine designs. He turns to September 29th and marks it with a single symbol, a cross. Not the Christian cross of faith, but an X, an intersection, a point where forces meet. Then he closes the diary and leaves it on his bedside table, positioned carefully as if he expects someone to find it. What happens next dissolves into darkness. The English Channel at night presents itself as absolute black, a void where water meets sky without horizon. No moon penetrates the cloud cover this evening. The Dresden's navigation lights cut through the murk, but 10 meters beyond the railings, visibility vanishes entirely. The ship's engines throb steadily, pushing the vessel through calm seas toward the white cliffs of Dover. At 6:15 the next morning, Diesel's companion knocks on his cabin door. No answer. He knocks again, louder. Still nothing. Finally, a steward unlocks the door. The cabin is empty. The bed remains undisturbed, sheets tucked tight. Diesel's nightshirt lies folded on the pillow. His watch sits on the bedside table. The diary lies open to that marked page, the cross staring up like an accusation. A search of the ship reveals nothing. Rudolf Diesel has vanished as completely as heat, dispersing into the atmosphere. The Dresden arrives in Harwich on schedule. British authorities board immediately. They question every passenger, every crew member. Did anyone see Diesel after dinner? Did anyone hear unusual sounds in the night? The answers all point to the same conclusion. Sometime between 10 in the evening and dawn, Rudolf Diesel went over the side of the ship into the Channel's black waters. But was he pushed? Did he jump? Or did he simply lose his balance in the darkness? The investigation begins with his belongings. In his cabin, they find that diary with its mysterious cross. They find correspondence with British Admiralty officials confirming his meeting. They find technical drawings of submarine engines, annotated in Diesel's precise handwriting. And in his wallet they find something that makes investigators pause. A withdrawal slip from Deutsche Bank showing he removed 10,000 German marks just days before boarding the Dresden. 10,000 marks. A fortune in 1913. Enough to start a new life somewhere far from Germany, far from the pressures crushing him from all sides. Because Rudolf Diesel, despite his fame, despite the engine that carries his name into every corner of the industrialized world, is drowning in debt. His patents expire soon. Companies that once paid him royalties now build diesel engines without compensation. The legal battles exhaust him. He writes to friends about crushing headaches, about sleepless nights calculating finances that never balance. The suicide theory takes shape immediately. A brilliant man, overwhelmed by financial ruin, steps into the darkness rather than face bankruptcy and disgrace. It makes a certain sense. It follows a logic as neat as a thermodynamic equation. But the 10,000 marks complicate this narrative. Why withdraw such a sum before committing suicide? Why not leave it for his family, who will desperately need it? Unless Diesel planned something else entirely. Unless the withdrawal represents the first step of an escape. A carefully orchestrated disappearance that would allow him to shed his old life and begin again somewhere new. Consider the timing. Diesel's meeting with the British Admiralty concerns submarine engines, technology that gives vessels unprecedented range beneath the waves. Britain and Germany stand on the precipice of war. Every military planner in Europe understands that the next great conflict will be won or lost by industrial capacity, by technological superiority, and Rudolf Diesel possesses knowledge that could tip the balance. German military intelligence has been watching him. Files declassified decades later confirm this. They track his correspondence with foreign governments. They note his meetings with rival nations' naval architects. To them, Diesel represents a security risk, a man whose expertise might be sold to the highest bidder. The coal industry watches him too. In 1913, coal powers the world. British coal exports alone generate 5 billion marks annually. The coal barons of Wales and Newcastle built empires on black rock hauled from the earth. Steam engines burning coal-drive ships, trains, factories. The entire industrial order rests on coal's dominance. Then comes Rudolf Diesel with an engine that burns oil instead. An engine twice as efficient as steam, an engine that threatens to make coal obsolete. Some men have lost fortunes already. Others see ruin approaching like a locomotive they cannot stop. How far would they go to protect their interests? How much pressure would they apply to eliminate the threat? 10 days pass. The Dresden's crew scans the waters for any sign of a body. Ships crossing the channel keep watch. The English coast receives warnings to report anything washed ashore. On October 9th, a Dutch pilot boat named the Koertzen spots something floating in the channel's grey waters. The crew hauls it alongside with gaffs. A body, badly decomposed, unrecognizable. The face has been eaten away. The hands are skeletal. The clothing hangs in tatters. They cannot bring it aboard. The state of decomposition makes this impossible. Instead, they remove items from the pockets. A knife case, a small bottle, a coin purse. Then they return the body to the sea, marking the location carefully before continuing to port. Rudolf Diesel's son Eugen examines the recovered items days later. He identifies the knife case immediately. His father carried it always. The coin purse he recognizes too, a gift from his mother years ago. But the bottle puzzles him until he remembers. His father suffered from severe headaches and carried medication constantly. The identification seems certain. The location matches where Diesel would have entered the water if he went overboard from the Dresden. The timeline fits perfectly. Rudolf Diesel died in the English Channel on September 29, 1913. But how? Let us examine the physics of a fall from the Dresden's deck. The railing stands approximately 9 meters above the waterline. A body falling from this height accelerates at 9.8 meters per second squared, reaching a velocity of roughly 13 meters per second upon impact. In still water, this would be survivable. Painful, certainly. Potentially injurious, but survivable. The channel's temperature in late September hovers around 12 degrees Celsius, cold enough to induce immediate shock, cold enough to trigger gasping reflex, forcing involuntary inhalation. If Diesel struck the water unconscious, or if the impact stunned him, he would have, perhaps 4 minutes before hypothermia claimed him. 4 minutes in darkness, in water so cold it numbs thought itself. But if he remained conscious, if he intended to survive, he could have called for help. The Dresden moved at only 12 knots. Swimming is impossible in those conditions, but staying afloat while shouting for rescue is entirely feasible. The crew could have heard him. Someone could have thrown a life ring, unless he wanted to die silently, or unless he was already unconscious when he entered the water. Forensic analysis attempted decades later suggests the decomposition pattern matches a body that entered the water violently rather than deliberately. The injuries, though difficult to assess given the state of the remains, hint at trauma to the head, consistent with a blow rather than a fall. But these analyses come long after the fact, based on photographs and reports rather than physical evidence. The body itself returned to the sea. The investigation closed. Rudolf Diesel died by misadventure, authorities concluded. An accident. A tragedy. A great man lost to the darkness. Yet the questions persist, compressed into the historical record like fuel awaiting ignition. Why mark the diary with that cross? If planning suicide, why the cryptic symbol rather than a note to his family? If planning escape, why leave the diary to be found at all? Why request a wake-up call for 6:15 if you intend to be dead by morning? Was it misdirection? A detail meant to suggest routine when chaos was planned? Or did Diesel genuinely expect to wake, to attend that meeting, to continue his work? Why withdraw 10,000 marks? The sum represents careful planning, not impulse. Whether for flight or for some other purpose, it indicates deliberation, forethought. Men who kill themselves in despair do not typically plan financial logistics first. And why then, with all that money, with that important meeting looming, would Diesel choose that specific night to end his life or vanish? The British Admiralty provides one answer. Declassified intelligence files reveal they had been negotiating with Diesel for months. They wanted his expertise for submarine engines that could extend range from hundreds to thousands of nautical miles. They offered substantial payment. They promised protection from German military intelligence. German spies knew about the meeting. They had intercepted correspondence. They understood the implications of Diesel sharing his knowledge with Britain's Royal Navy. In the great game of pre-war espionage, Rudolf Diesel became a piece that needed removing from the board. Could they have arranged an accident? Could agents aboard the Dresden, posing as passengers or crew, have confronted Diesel after dinner? A struggle in the darkness, a blow to the head, a body pushed over the railing where it would vanish into the black water without witness? The coal industry offers another possibility. 7 diesel engine factories burned between 1910 and 1913. Investigators called the fires accidents, but patterns emerged. Each fire destroyed new prototypes. Each occurred during crucial testing phases. Each set diesel development back by months. In Wales, coal miners rioted when a shipping company announced conversion to diesel power. They burned the company offices. They threatened engineers who worked on the conversion. They understood that diesel meant unemployment, meant their skills becoming obsolete, meant the end of a way of life that stretched back generations. Would they kill the inventor himself? Would desperate men, watching their livelihoods evaporate, decide to eliminate the threat at its source? Or perhaps the simplest answer is correct. Perhaps Rudolf Diesel, brilliant and troubled, overwhelmed by debt and pressure and the weight of expectations, simply decided to end it. Perhaps the cross in his diary meant exactly what crosses often mean: the end of something, the intersection of life and death. Perhaps he walked to the railing in darkness, climbed over, and let gravity and cold water solve problems that seemed otherwise insoluble. We cannot know. The English Channel keeps its secrets. The water that received Rudolf Diesel's body continues to flow, mixing with the Atlantic, dispersing molecules across oceans. His atoms by now have travelled the world, incorporated into fish and seabirds, evaporated into clouds and rained down again, cycling through the great systems he understood so well. But here is what we do know. Rudolf Diesel created something that outlived him. His engine, refined and evolved, powers our civilization today. Every cargo ship crossing oceans, every locomotive pulling freight, every generator providing backup power, every submarine patrolling beneath the waves owes its existence to principles he discovered. He understood compression. He understood that applying enough pressure to the right substance at the right moment causes transformation. Heat appears from nowhere. Energy releases. Power emerges from principles as fundamental as the conservation laws governing the universe itself. Perhaps Rudolf Diesel, in those final hours, experienced compression of his own, forces pressing from every direction: financial pressure, military pressure, industrial pressure, competition and debt and expectation and fear, all crushing down until something had to give, until transformation became inevitable. In thermodynamics, compression has a limit. Apply enough pressure and substances change state. Gases become liquids. Liquids become solids. Molecular structures rearrange under stress. What was must become something new or break entirely. Rudolf Diesel, standing at the Dresden's railing in darkness, reached his compression limit. What transformation occurred in that moment, we cannot say, but the principle remains. Pressure builds until something changes. Forces accumulate until equilibrium is impossible. The mystery of his death matters less than the miracle of his life's work. The question of murder or suicide or accident pales before the answer he gave the world. That compression alone, without spark or flame, can ignite fuel and drive pistons and power the engines of progress. He proved that pressure creates possibility, that forces bearing down can produce not destruction but creation, that in the instant of maximum compression, when everything seems about to break, something new can emerge. The English Channel flows on, indifferent to questions asked and never answered. But the engines bearing Rudolf Diesel's name pulse with life across the world, compressing fuel and air with the same precision he dreamed about while standing at that railing. They are his true memorial, not the body lost to cold water, not the cross marked in a diary, not the mystery that will never fully resolve, but the principle made real, the compression that transforms, the pressure that creates rather than destroys. And perhaps that is enough, perhaps that is everything, to understand the man who vanished into the SS Channel. We must travel back to where pressure first shaped him, to Paris in 1858, where a leather worker named Theodor Diesel stitches belts and bags in a cramped workshop that smells of tanning, chemicals and disappointment. His hands are stained brown from the leather. His lungs rasp from years of inhaling fumes. He came to Paris chasing opportunity, following the promise of industrial expansion, believing that skilled craftsmen would thrive in the new economy. He was wrong. The 1860s bring economic collapse. Banks fail across Europe, credit evaporates. Luxury goods, the leather accessories that Theodore crafts with such care, become impossible to sell. Orders dry up, debts accumulate. The workshop that once employed 3 assistants now employs only Theodore himself, working longer hours for diminishing returns, watching the arithmetic of poverty calculate its inevitable sum. In this failing workshop, a boy watches his father break down. Rudolf Diesel is born March 18, 1858, the second of three children. He is small, serious, unnaturally quiet. While other children play in Paris streets, Rudolf sits in the corner of his father's workshop, observing. He watches his father's hands move across leather, precise and practiced. He watches the machinery his father uses to punch holes, to press patterns, to cut clean lines. He watches mechanical advantage in action. Lever and wheel, gear and belt, force multiplied through simple machines. And he watches his father's face as another order cancels, as another creditor demands payment, as the mathematics of ruin become undeniable. This is Rudolf's first lesson in pressure, how it accumulates slowly, how it compounds, how it can crush dreams between the forces of circumstance and necessity. The workshop closes in 1870. Theodor Diesel admits defeat. The family's possessions are sold to pay debts. What remains fits into 2 trunks and a carpet bag. They flee, Paris for London, joining tens of thousands of refugees escaping the Franco-Prussian War. The trains overflow with displaced families, with people carrying everything they own, with the wreckage of ordinary lives disrupted by forces beyond their control. Rudolf is 12 years old. He speaks French and German but not English. He owns 2 shirts, 1 pair of trousers, and a notebook where he sketches mechanical devices he sees. Everything else is gone. The home he knew, the city he loved, the stability that childhood requires, all compressed into memory, into that place where lost things persist as aching absence. London receives them without welcome. The Diesel family finds lodging in a boarding house where 6 families share a single bathroom. Theodor finds work in a leather factory, no longer a master craftsman but an hourly labourer performing repetitive tasks. The pay barely covers rent and food. There is no money for Rudolf's education, no possibility of apprenticeship, no clear path forward. But London offers Rudolf something Paris never could, the South Kensington Museum. Consider what this meant. The museum houses the greatest collection of industrial machinery in the world. Steam engines that drove the Industrial Revolution, looms that transformed textile production, machine tools that enabled precision manufacturing, all displayed for public education, free to anyone who walks through the doors. Rudolf walks through those doors every day the museum opens. He arrives when they unlock the entrance at 10 in the morning. He leaves when guards usher him out at closing. He stands before each machine for hours, studying every component, understanding how motion transfers through gears and belts, how pressure acts on pistons, how energy converts from one form to another. He fills his notebook with drawings, not artistic sketches but engineering diagrams, scaled and annotated, showing precise relationships between components. He teaches himself technical, drafting. He learns vocabulary in 3 languages: gear, Zahnrad, engrenage, piston, Kolben, piston, cylinder, Zylinder, cylindre. The museum guards come to know him, this serious German boy who never speaks to other visitors, who brings bread and cheese wrapped in paper for lunch, who stares at machines with an intensity that borders on obsession. They let him stay past closing sometimes, understanding that something important is happening here, that this boy is not simply looking but learning, not simply observing but absorbing the fundamental principles of mechanical engineering. What drives him? Partly fascination, the pure joy of understanding how things work, but partly something darker, the memory of his father's workshop closing, the humiliation of poverty, the determination to never be powerless again. Rudolf understands that knowledge equals power, that understanding machines means understanding the forces reshaping civilization, that engineering creates value where none existed before. He is building himself, piece by piece, gear by gear, into an engine of ambition. After 2 years in London, the pressure of survival forces another change. Theodor's brother, who runs a machine factory in Augsburg, Germany, offers to take Rudolf as apprentice. The family cannot afford to keep him. At 14, Rudolf must leave them behind, must travel alone to a country he barely remembers, must begin again in a factory town where he knows no one. Imagine that journey. A 14-year-old boy on a train crossing Europe, carrying a single trunk, heading toward an uncertain future. He has been compressed by circumstance into something harder than childhood should produce. The lightness has been pressed out of him, replaced by something denser, more purposeful, more capable of bearing weight. Augsburg receives him with industrial noise. The city pounds with the rhythm of factories. Steam hammers drive pilings. Lathes scream through metal. Furnaces roar day and night, turning iron ore into the structural elements of modern infrastructure. The air tastes of coal, smoke, and metal dust. Everything is louder, dirtier, more violent than Paris or London. Rudolf's uncle, Rudolf Diesel, runs a precision instrument factory. He manufactures surveying equipment, measuring devices, tools that demand accuracy to within fractions of a millimeter. This is not crude metalwork, but engineering as art form, where tolerance matters and quality determines reputation. Christoph recognizes something in his nephew immediately. This quiet teenager who sketches constantly, who asks questions that reveal deep understanding, who absorbs technical knowledge like dry sand absorbs water. He enrolls Rudolf in the Augsburg Royal Trade School. Here Rudolf discovers that he possesses a gift. Not just interest in engineering, but genuine talent. Mathematics that confounds other students comes easily to him. He visualizes forces and stresses intuitively. He understands thermodynamics, the science of heat and energy, with a clarity that impresses his professors. But more than intelligence, Rudolf brings intensity. He studies 12, 14, 16 hours daily. While other students drink beer and chase girls, Rudolf solves problems. While they celebrate weekends, Rudolf works through derivations. He is not likable. He is not social. He burns with an inner fire that others find uncomfortable, as if the pressure that shaped him generates heat that must find outlet or consume him entirely. At 18, Rudolf earns admission to Munich Polytechnic, the finest technical university in Germany. The entrance examinations terrify most applicants. The mathematics alone requires mastery of calculus, differential equations, and analytical mechanics. The physics demands understanding of Newtonian mechanics, thermodynamics, and electromagnetism. Most students prepare for years. Rudolf passes on his first attempt with scores that make professors check for errors. Munich. Polytechnic occupies grand buildings in the city's heart. Its laboratories contain the latest equipment. Its professors include the leading researchers in their fields. Rudolf enters this environment like a starving man finding feast. Every lecture feeds his hunger for understanding. Every laboratory session reveals principles he can apply. He studies under Carl von Linde, the pioneering refrigeration engineer who transformed thermodynamics from theory into industrial application. Von Linde teaches Rudolf that heat is not a substance but energy in transition, that temperature measures molecular motion, that phase changes involve latent energy more significant than sensible temperature changes. These principles seem abstract until von Linde demonstrates his ammonia refrigeration system, compressing gas until pressure forces it to liquefy, then allowing it to expand and absorb heat, creating cold from compression and expansion alone. Rudolf watches the refrigeration machine cycle through its process. Compress, condense, expand, evaporate, compress again. The simplicity stuns him. No combustion, no chemical reaction, just gas compressed until it changes state, then allowed to expand and change back, capturing energy in the transition. A question forms. If compression alone can liquefy gas and create cold, could compression alone generate enough heat to ignite fuel? The question persists. Rudolf cannot shake it. Conventional engines use external combustion. Steam engines burn coal in fireboxes, transferring heat through boiler walls to water that becomes steam that drives pistons. Gas engines use electric sparks to ignite fuel-air mixtures at carefully timed moments. Both require separate ignition systems. Both waste enormous amounts of energy in the process. But what if fuel ignited spontaneously from compression heat? What if the piston itself, compressing air to high enough pressure, generated sufficient temperature to combust fuel without spark or flame? Thermodynamics suggest it is possible. The Carnot cycle, the theoretical maximum efficiency for heat engines, depends on temperature difference between hot and cold reservoirs. Higher compression ratios create higher temperatures, approaching theoretical efficiency limits that existing engines cannot reach. Rudolf begins calculating. He fills notebooks with thermodynamic cycles, compression ratios, temperature calculations. He explores the physics of adiabatic compression, where squeezing gas generates heat because work converts to thermal energy. He calculates that compressing air to 30 or 40 atmospheres would produce temperatures exceeding the ignition point of petroleum fuels. But calculation is not reality. The engineering challenges appear overwhelming. What materials could withstand such pressure? How would fuel be injected at the precise moment? How could the cycle be controlled and sustained? Rudolf graduates from Munich Polytechnic in 1880 with the highest score in the institution's history, 97.2%. His professors urge him toward academic research. They offer positions in their laboratories. They predict brilliant future in theoretical thermodynamics. Rudolf declines. He wants to build things, not study them. He wants engines, not equations. He accepts apprenticeship with Sulzer Brothers in Winterthur, Switzerland, a company manufacturing steam engines and refrigeration equipment. This choice nearly kills him. 6 months into his apprenticeship, Rudolf collapses during night shift. Fever consumes him. His temperature spikes to 41 degrees Celsius. Typhoid, doctors diagnose. The waterborne disease ravages Winterthur during this period, killing dozens. Rudolf survives, but barely. For 3 weeks, he hovers at the edge of death, his body fighting infection it cannot defeat without time and rest. During the fever, Rudolf hallucinates. His mind, superheated like the engines he dreams of building, produces visions of machines running on pure air, of pistons compressing gases into fire, of heat appearing from nowhere through compression alone. The hallucinations possess mathematical precision, even delirious, Rudolf calculates. His fever dreams include compression ratios, temperature gradients, thermal efficiency equations. He wakes eventually, 20 pounds lighter, weak as a child, but alive. And the hallucinations have clarified his vision. He knows now, with certainty that transcends logic, that compression ignition is possible, that an engine can be built that ignites fuel through heat of compression alone, that thermodynamic theory can become mechanical reality. His recovery takes months. He returns to work gradually, rebuilding strength through force of will. The illness has aged him. At 21, Rudolf looks 30, his face gaunt, his eyes bearing the stare of someone who has seen death and returned with unwelcome knowledge. But the illness has also focused him. Mortality is real. Time is finite. If he wants to build his engine, he must begin now, not after more education, not after more apprenticeship. Now, while the vision burns clear in his mind. At Sulzer Brothers, Rudolf studies von Linde's ammonia refrigeration systems in detail. He watches compression liquefy gases. He measures the temperatures achieved. He understands that these machines prove his theory. Compression alone generates tremendous heat. The challenge is controlling that heat, timing it, using it to ignite fuel rather than merely compress refrigerant. He also witnesses the dangers. Ammonia refrigeration operates at 15 atmospheres. At that pressure, seal failures spray toxic gas. Cylinder cracks cause explosive decompression. Safety requires constant vigilance, precise engineering, materials tested to their limits. Rudolf's engine will require 30, 40, perhaps 50 atmospheres. The pressures will be unprecedented. The forces involved will tear apart conventional machinery. He needs new materials, new designs, new approaches to sealing and combustion chamber construction. The engineering problems are immense, but Rudolf has been compressed his entire life. Poverty compressed his childhood. Displacement compressed his adolescence. Illness compressed him to the edge of death itself. Each pressure made him denser, harder, more capable of bearing weight. Now, he will compress air and fuel until they ignite. He will prove that pressure creates not destruction, but power. He will build an engine that transforms compression into motion, heat into work, theory into revolution. But first, he must convince someone to fund his impossible dream. He must find backers willing to invest in ideas that violate common sense. He must build credibility despite youth and illness, and the fact that every established engineer thinks his compression ignition concept is fantasy. The pressure builds. Financial pressure, technical pressure, the pressure of vision demanding realization. Rudolf feels it accumulating, atmosphere by atmosphere, compressing him toward that critical moment when something must ignite or everything collapses. He chooses ignition. At 25, Rudolf begins writing Theory and Construction of a Rational Heat Motor, the treatise that will change the world. He works on it obsessively, filling pages with calculations, diagrams, thermodynamic analyses. He explains compression ignition in exquisite detail, proving mathematically that fuel will ignite at 30 atmospheres, that his engine will achieve efficiencies triple those of steam power, that the design is practical and buildable. The manuscript grows to 100 pages. Rudolf refines every argument, anticipates every objection, presents his case with lawyers' precision and mathematicians' rigor. He stakes his entire future on these pages, on the power of ideas carefully presented, on the possibility that someone will read his words and see what he sees, an engine that will remake industrial civilization, and remarkably, impossibly, someone does. Professor Carl von Linde, his former teacher, reads the manuscript and recognizes genius. He introduces Rudolf to Krupp, to Mann, to the industrialists who have capital to risk on revolutionary ideas. He vouches for his former student, tells them this serious young man with fever-bright eyes has solved thermodynamics in ways von Linde himself never imagined. By 1893, Rudolf Diesel has secured funding, laboratory space, and a team of assistants. He is 35 years old. He has spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Every hardship has added another atmosphere of pressure, compressing him into an instrument capable of one thing: building the engine that bears his name. The pressure that shaped him will now reshape the world. But first, that pressure will nearly kill him and everyone around him, because achieving 35 atmospheres in a combustion chamber is not theory. It is violence. It is controlled explosion. It is standing at the edge of forces powerful enough to tear metal apart and daring them to behave according to calculation rather than chaos. Rudolf Diesel stands at that edge, ready to jump. The laboratory in Augsburg occupies a converted warehouse near the Lech River. Its high ceilings carry sound badly, amplifying every clang of metal, every hiss of steam, every shout of workers moving heavy equipment. Sunlight angles through tall windows, illuminating dust that hangs perpetually in the air. This is where Rudolf Diesel will prove his theory or destroy himself trying. The first prototype stands 3 meters tall, a brutal sculpture of cast iron and steel. Its cylinder alone weighs 800 kilograms. The piston must withstand pressures no piston has ever faced. The crankshaft must convert explosive force into rotational motion without shattering. Every component represents engineering at the edge of what materials can bear. Rudolf circles the machine constantly, checking tolerances, measuring clearances, calculating stress points. His assistants, experienced machinists who have built steam engines for decades, watch him with mixture of respect and concern. This young engineer, with his elaborate theories and precise specifications, demands perfection they are not certain is achievable. The ignition principle seems simple enough. Compress air to 35 atmospheres, which generates heat exceeding 600 degrees Celsius. Then inject fuel at the moment of maximum compression. The fuel ignites instantly from the heat, driving the piston down with explosive force. No spark, no flame, just compression and combustion in perfect synchronization. Simple in theory. In practice, every variable must align precisely, or the engine destroys itself. Fuel injection timing matters to the millisecond. Inject too early and fuel ignites before the piston reaches top position, forcing compression backward against the crankshaft. Inject too late and fuel burns during expansion, wasting energy. The injection must occur at the exact instant when the piston reaches maximum height, when compression peaks, when temperature exceeds ignition point. The injection pressure must exceed cylinder pressure. At 35 atmospheres, fuel must be forced in at 40 or 50 atmospheres. This requires pumps that do not exist, valves that can open and close in fractions of a second, nozzles that atomize fuel into mist fine enough to ignite completely. And the cylinder itself must contain forces equivalent to small explosions occurring dozens of times per minute. The walls must resist stress that would crack conventional castings. The head must seal absolutely despite temperatures that expand metal and pressures that force gases through microscopic gaps. Rudolf has calculated everything. He has designed solutions to problems that have never been problems before because no one has attempted compression. Ignition. His drawings show specialized injectors, reinforced cylinders, timing mechanisms of unprecedented precision. But calculations are not metal. Drawings are not reality. On July 10, 1893, Rudolf gives the order to attempt first ignition. His lead assistant, a machinist named Heinrich, operates the controls. Another assistant monitors pressure gauges. A third stands ready with fire equipment. Rudolf positions himself at observation window, notebook in hand, prepared to record every detail. Heinrich opens the fuel valve. He engages the compression mechanism. The engine breathes a vast inhale as the piston draws down, pulling air into the cylinder. Then, compression begins. The piston rises, forcing air into smaller and smaller volume. Pressure builds. 10 atmospheres, 20, 30. Temperature climbs with it, invisible but measurable through thermocouples embedded in the cylinder wall. At 35 atmospheres, Heinrich triggers fuel injection. For one perfect moment, nothing happens. The engine hangs suspended between potential and reality, compression complete, fuel entering combustion chamber, temperature climbing toward ignition point. Then the world explodes. The cylinder head shatters with sound like artillery fire. Metal shrapnel drives upward, embedding in the ceiling 3 meters above. The piston seizes mid-stroke. The crankshaft twists against bearings designed for rotational load, not sudden stop. Oil sprays from ruptured seals. Steam vents from cooling system fractures. The blast wave throws Heinrich backward. He strikes workbench and crumples, blood streaming from gash above his eye. The other assistants freeze, stunned by violence that transforms their machine from promising experiment to smoking wreckage in less than a second. Rudolf feels the explosion in his chest, percussion wave hitting him through the observation window. His ears ring, his vision swims, but he is already moving, already reaching for Heinrich. Already assessing damage with the detached precision of someone who has anticipated this possibility and prepared for it. Heinrich is conscious, dazed, but functional. The gash bleeds dramatically, but proves superficial. Rudolf bandages it quickly while surveying the destruction. The cylinder head lies in pieces. The piston is welded to the cylinder wall by heat and pressure. The fuel injection system is bent beyond repair. The frame itself shows stress cracks from forces that exceeded design specifications by orders of magnitude. Months of work, thousands of marks invested in materials and machining, all destroyed in 1 second of violence that proves compression. Ignition is possible, but his execution is fatally flawed. A lesser man would quit. A sensible man would acknowledge defeat. Rudolf orders new parts that afternoon and begins redesigning the injection system. He understands now what calculation could not reveal. The combustion is not gradual but explosive. Fuel does not burn steadily but detonates. The pressure spike occurs too fast for mechanical systems to handle. He needs stronger materials, better timing, more sophisticated injection that introduces fuel gradually rather than all at once. The second attempt, 3 weeks later, fails differently. The engine runs for 5 seconds before the piston cracks and combustion gases blow past it, venting into the crankcase where they ignite lubricating oil. Fire pours from every seal. Assistants scramble with extinguishers while Rudolf logs the failure mode, noting that piston rings cannot maintain seal at these pressures. That ring design must be reconsidered completely. The third attempt fails when the fuel injection pump cannot achieve sufficient pressure. The fourth fails when injection timing proves wrong by 20 milliseconds. The fifth fails when cylinder wall cracks propagate from bolt holes Rudolf drilled to mount pressure sensors. Failure after failure, explosion after explosion. Each one teaches something. Each one costs money, time, confidence. Rudolf's backers at Krupp and Mann begin asking questions. When will the engine run? How much more investment is required? Should they cut their losses? Rudolf shows them his notebooks. Every failure documented, every lesson learned, every modification that brings him closer to success. He speaks with absolute certainty that the next attempt will work, that he is converging on the solution, that persistence will triumph over resistance. They give him more time, more money, more rope with which to hang himself or climb to glory. But now Rudolf faces another pressure: industrial espionage. His revolutionary engine attracts attention throughout Europe. Competitors want his designs. Companies that build steam engines see the threat and want to copy or sabotage his work. Spies pose as visiting engineers, asking innocent questions that reveal careful study of technical literature. They offer his assistants money for information. They photograph his laboratory through windows at night. Rudolf begins encoding his notes. He develops a cipher based on thermodynamic equations. Compression ratios become letters, temperature values become numbers, efficiency calculations become syntax. To read his notebooks now requires not just technical knowledge, but the key that relates engineering values to linguistic meaning. He shares this key with no one, not even his most trusted assistants. He stores critical drawings in a safe and takes them home each night. He dismisses visitors who ask too many questions. He grows paranoid, seeing threats everywhere, understanding that his engine represents potential fortunes large enough to justify theft or violence. The failures continue. Attempt 23 fails when combustion pressure buckles, cylinder walls despite thickness. Rudolf increased after attempt 18. Attempt 37 fails when the timing mechanism breaks under stress. Attempt 52 fails when fuel quality proves inconsistent, some batches igniting properly while others fail. Each failure crushes morale further. Assistants quit, finding work in more conventional engineering. Backers withdraw support. Rudolf's wife Marta writes letters begging him to accept a professorship, to abandon this quest that consumes their savings and his health. He barely sleeps. He survives on coffee and nervous energy. His hands shake from exhaustion. But he will not stop, cannot stop. His entire life has compressed into this single point, building the engine that will validate every calculation, every sacrifice, every moment of pressure that shaped him into an instrument capable of this work. Attempt 68 runs for 20 seconds before catastrophic bearing failure. Rudolf considers this progress. 20 seconds is infinity compared to previous attempts. It proves the fundamental principle works. Fuel ignites from compression. Combustion drives the piston. Energy converts to mechanical work exactly as theory predicts. He modifies bearing design, increasing surface area to distribute load. Attempt 71 runs for 2 minutes. Attempt 84 runs for 5 minutes before oil system fails. Each success extends runtime slightly, proving that solutions exist, that engineering can overcome violence through precision. The laboratory fills with failed components. Cracked cylinders stack in corners. Bent crankshafts lean against walls. Shattered pistons litter workbenches. Each piece represents money spent, time invested, hope tested against reality's resistance. Rudolf walks among them like general surveying battlefield casualties, understanding that victory requires accepting losses most cannot bear. Attempt 97 achieves stable combustion for 15 minutes. The engine settles into rhythm. Compression, injection, combustion, expansion, exhaust. The cycle repeats with mechanical regularity, each revolution converting fuel to power through principles Rudolf first envisioned during typhoid fever, but thermal stress causes cylinder head bolts to loosen, destroying head gasket, ending the run. Rudolf redesigns the entire head assembly. He specifies new bolt pattern, new gasket material, new torque specifications. Attempt 103 runs for an hour before fuel pump fails. Attempt 109 runs for 2 hours before piston rings wear out from abrasive combustion products. 3 years pass. 3 years of explosions and failures and incremental progress. 3 years of financial pressure mounting as investment exceeds projections by factors that make backers threaten legal action. 3 years of Rudolf's life compressed into single-minded pursuit that isolates him from family, from colleagues, from everything except the engine that must work, because he has sacrificed too much for failure. On February 17th, 1897, Rudolf begins attempt 123. He has incorporated lessons from every previous failure. The cylinder uses new iron alloy developed specifically for high-pressure applications. The injection system features redesigned pump and nozzle that atomize fuel better than previous versions. The timing mechanism includes flyweights that adjust injection automatically based on engine speed. The cooling system uses forced water circulation rather than relying on natural convection. Heinrich, still with Rudolf despite years of chaos, operates the controls. They have developed silent communication through glances and gestures, understanding that words are unnecessary when men have worked together through so many failures that success seems impossible yet inevitable. The engine starts normally, compression begins, fuel injects, combustion occurs. The piston drives down, the crankshaft rotates, the flywheel spins up, storing momentum, and it continues. The cycle repeats. 10 revolutions, 20, 50, 100. The engine settles into rhythm so steady that vibration becomes hypnotic. Rudolf watches pressure gauges holding steady at 35 atmospheres. He watches temperature stabilize at 600 degrees Celsius. He watches fuel consumption meter showing exactly the rate his calculations predicted. 5 minutes pass. 10 minutes. Heinrich adjusts throttle and the engine responds smoothly, increasing speed without hesitation. They vary load by connecting brake mechanism to the output shaft. The engine maintains rhythm, compensating automatically through flywheel momentum and injection timing. 20 minutes, 30, Rudolf realizes he is holding his breath. He forces himself to breathe normally, to record observations in his notebook with trembling hands, to document this moment that represents vindication of everything he has endured. After 1 hour, Rudolf allows himself to believe. The engine runs perfectly. Every parameter matches prediction. Temperature, pressure, fuel consumption, power output all align with theory. This is not luck. This is not accident. This is compression ignition working exactly as thermodynamics promised it would. After 2 hours, assistants gather around the machine, understanding they are witnessing history. The engine that experts called impossible runs with mechanical precision before them. The cycle Rudolf dreamed about during fever proves itself in metal and motion. Pressure creates heat. Heat ignites fuel. Fuel drives piston. Piston turns crankshaft. Work emerges from principles as fundamental as conservation of energy itself. Rudolf monitors efficiency continuously. He measures fuel consumed against power produced. The mathematics stun him even though he predicted this outcome. The engine achieves 26.2% thermal efficiency. 26.2% of fuel energy converts to mechanical work. Steam engines achieve 9% at best. Rudolf's engine is 3 times more efficient than any heat engine in existence. 3 times. The number reverberates. This is not incremental improvement. This is revolution. An engine this efficient will transform every industry that depends on power. It will obsolete steam within decades. It will change economics of transportation, manufacturing, generation. It will make Rudolf Diesel's name immortal. After 3 hours, Rudolf orders the engine shut down. Not from failure, from success. He wants to inspect every component to verify that nothing has degraded, that sustained operation causes no hidden damage. They disassemble the machine with reverence, treating each part like archaeological artifact. The inspection reveals minor wear but nothing catastrophic. Piston rings show slight scoring but remain functional. Cylinder walls display heat marks but no cracks. Fuel injector nozzle has carbon buildup but continues spraying properly. Everything works. Everything holds together. The engine is viable. Rudolf conducts 17-hour endurance test the following week. The engine runs continuously from dawn until midnight, maintaining steady operation without adjustment or repair. It proves commercial viability absolutely. This is not laboratory curiosity but practical machine that can power industry. During this test, Rudolf demonstrates fuel flexibility by switching from petroleum to peanut oil. The engine continues running without hesitation. It burns vegetable oil as efficiently as petroleum, proving that his invention can use renewable fuels, that dependence on fossil resources is choice rather than necessity. This flexibility fascinates Rudolf. He envisions farmers growing fuel crops, producing energy locally rather than depending on coal mines or oil wells. He sees his engine democratizing power, distributing generation rather than concentrating it. The social implications excite him as much as technical triumph. But Rudolf's success awakens darker forces. News of his achievement spreads through industrial networks. Companies that ignored his work now desperately seek information. Competitors who dismissed compression ignition as fantasy suddenly recognize threat to their market dominance. The espionage intensifies. Strange men photograph his laboratory from across the river. Someone attempts break-in at night, fleeing when guards respond. Rudolf finds evidence that assistants have been approached with bribes for information. He discovers that his patent applications have been copied before filing, forcing legal battles over priority. He strengthens security. He limits access to the laboratory. He becomes suspicious of everyone, trusting no one completely, understanding that his engine represents wealth large enough to justify theft or sabotage. And through it all, Rudolf studies nature's compression ignition. He becomes obsessed with bombardier beetles. insects that mix chemicals at 200 atmospheres, a pressure in specialized chambers within their bodies. The mixture explodes, spraying boiling quinone solution that defends against predators. The beetle controls this explosion with biological valves and timing that makes human engineering seem crude by comparison. Rudolf dissects beetles. He examines their compression chambers under microscope. He studies how chitin structures withstand internal explosions. He marvels that evolution discovered compression ignition millions of years before human engineers thought to try it. Nature has been using these principles forever, he realizes. His engine is not invention but discovery. He has simply noticed what life knew all along, that compression transforms, that pressure creates power, that forces bearing down can produce not destruction but beautiful, controlled violence that drives the world forward. This understanding humbles him even as his engine brings fame. He has not created something new. He has revealed something eternal, written into physics itself, waiting for someone compressed by enough pressure to recognize truth that was always there. Patents. Secure, engine proven, backers celebrating. Rudolf Diesel stands at February 1897, holding future in his hands. The engine bearing his name will spread worldwide. It will power ships and trains and generators. It will transform civilization exactly as he predicted. But he cannot know what this transformation will cost, cannot anticipate the coal industry's resistance, the military's interest, the pressures that will accumulate until they crush him aboard a ship crossing the English Channel on a September night 16 years hence. For now, he has conquered pressure. He has proven that compression creates rather than destroys. He has built impossible engine through persistence that refused to acknowledge defeat. The machine runs, the principle proves true. Rudolf Diesel has succeeded, and the world will never be the same. The engine that nearly killed Rudolf Diesel conquers the world with speed that stuns even him. In 1897, one prototype exists. By 1900, factories in Germany, Switzerland, and France produced diesel engines. Commercially, by 1912, 20,000 installations operate worldwide. This is not gradual adoption but revolution. Industries abandoning steam with urgency that suggests they were waiting for something better and recognized it instantly. The numbers tell the story. A steam engine converting coal to mechanical power achieves 9% efficiency at best. 2/3 of coal's energy escapes as waste heat up smokestacks. Diesel's engine achieves 26% efficiency, soon improving to 30% as engineers refine his design. The mathematics are irrefutable. Diesel burns 1/3 the fuel for equivalent power. For industries where fuel represents major cost, this difference means survival or bankruptcy. Shipping companies convert first. Ocean transport depends on range and cargo capacity. Steamships carry enormous coal bunkers, dedicating precious volume to fuel rather than freight. The coal itself adds weight, reducing what vessels can carry. Stokers must shovel fuel continuously, requiring crews that consume food and wages. Diesel changes everything. A ship burning oil instead of coal needs smaller fuel tanks. Oil contains more energy per kilogram than coal. No stokers are required. The entire economics of maritime shipping shift overnight. Companies that convert to diesel undercut competitors' freight rates while maintaining profit margins. Companies that resist conversion watch market share evaporate. The Selandia proves the concept absolutely. Built in Copenhagen in 1912, she is the first ocean-going diesel-powered cargo ship. Her engines, massive 8-cylinder monsters, burn petroleum to drive propellers that push her through water at 12 knots. She sails from Copenhagen to Bangkok, halfway around the world, using fuel that costs 1/3 what steam competitors burn. The shipping industry takes notice. Within 3 years, 40% of new merchant ships specify diesel engines. Within a decade, steam becomes obsolete for long-distance cargo. The transformation happens so quickly that shipyards struggle to retrain workers. Steam engineers find their expertise worthless overnight. New specialists who understand fuel injection and compression ratios command premium wages, but shipping is merely the beginning. Diesel engines invade every industry that requires stationary power. Factories install them to drive machinery. Mines use them to pump water and hoist ore. Cities deploy them for electrical generation. The engines run continuously for months, requiring minimal maintenance, burning fuel efficiently, generating power without the complexity of boiler systems. Electric utilities adopt diesel with particular enthusiasm. Steam turbines require constant attention, elaborate water treatment, skilled operators monitoring pressure and temperature. Diesel generators run themselves, starting automatically when power demand increases, synchronizing with grids, shutting down when not needed. The reliability transforms electrical generation from art to engineering. In Germany, industrial output increases 35% between 1900 and 1914. Economists debate causes better education, improved infrastructure, capital investment, but thermodynamics reveals the real driver. Diesel engines generating power 30% more efficiently than steam, reducing energy costs throughout manufacturing. German factories undercut British competitors' prices because German diesel engines burn less fuel than British steam engines to produce equivalent output. The British coal industry recognises the threat. Coal stocks on the London Exchange lose £200 million sterling in value as utilities and factories announce conversions to diesel. Mine owners watch demand collapse. Entire regions dependent on coal extraction face economic devastation. Welsh mining towns see populations decline as workers migrate seeking employment. The coal barons fight back. They fund research claiming diesel fumes cause health problems. They lobby governments to maintain coal subsidies. They spread rumours that diesel engines explode dangerously. Some resort to violence. Between 1910 and 1913, 7 diesel factories burn under suspicious circumstances. Arson investigators find accelerants but rarely identify culprits. The pattern suggests coordination, purpose, desperation. In Wales, coal miners riot when a shipping company announces fleet conversion. They storm company offices in Cardiff, destroying records and smashing furniture. They threaten engineers who work on diesel installations. They understand that each diesel engine represents lost jobs, closed mines, communities dying as fuel preferences shift. Their violence achieves nothing. The economics are inexorable. Diesel is simply superior, and markets reward superiority without sentiment. Rudolf watches this transformation with mixed emotions. He envisioned his engine democratizing power, distributing generation, freeing farmers and small manufacturers from dependence on coal monopolies. Instead, his invention concentrates industrial power differently, creating new monopolies around oil extraction and refining. The social revolution he imagined becomes economic disruption he never intended. But nothing disrupts warfare like diesel engines in submarines. Naval strategy has remained largely unchanged for centuries. Surface ships maneuver for advantage, firing cannons within visual range. Speed determines outcomes. The faster fleet controls engagement distance and retreat options. Submarines exist before diesel, but they are toys. Gasoline engines cannot operate underwater. Combustion requires air. Battery-powered electric motors provide submerged propulsion, but with range measured in tens of nautical miles. Early submarines must surface frequently to run gasoline engines that recharge batteries, making them vulnerable and essentially useless for warfare beyond coastal defense. Diesel engines transform submarines from curiosities into weapons that change naval warfare forever. Diesel combustion requires air, yes, But diesel engines achieve such efficiency that submarines can travel thousands of miles on surface power, then dive and run on batteries for tactical operations. The combination provides strategic range with tactical stealth. German U-boats demonstrate this capability devastatingly. In September 1914, U-boat 9 surfaces in the North Sea, locates 3 British cruisers, Aboukir, Hogue and Cressy, and sinks all 3 within 60 minutes. 1,400 sailors die. The British Admiralty reels from shock. A single small vessel, costing a fraction of battleship construction budgets, destroys 3 modern cruisers representing decades of investment. The implications spread through naval planning offices worldwide. Surface fleets become vulnerable. Traditional naval doctrine assumes visibility. You cannot sink what you cannot see. Submarines attack from invisibility. They submerge, approach targets silently, fire torpedoes, disappear. Diesel engines give them 14,000 nautical mile range, allowing them to patrol entire oceans rather than just coastlines. By 1918, German U-boats sink 6,000 Allied merchant ships. They nearly strangle Britain's supply lines. They force convoy systems that slow commerce. They make naval warfare 3-dimensional surface, air, and subsurface, requiring new tactics, new technologies, new thinking about maritime conflict. Rudolf does not live to see most of this. He vanishes in 1913, just as diesel engines begin powering submarines that will devastate shipping in the war to come. Had he lived, would he have celebrated this application? Would he have mourned it? His papers suggest ambivalence about military use, but his meeting with the British Admiralty proves he understood the strategic implications and engaged with them. Beyond warfare, diesel engines power the industrial transformation Rudolf envisioned. In America, Adolphus Busch, the brewing magnate, purchases American manufacturing rights for 1 million gold marks. This fortune makes Rudolf wealthy finally, after years of financial pressure. Busch builds engines at his Street Louis facilities, selling them to factories, power stations, and river transport companies. Mississippi River steamboats convert to diesel wholesale. The engines prove ideal for river work, reliable, efficient, powerful enough to push barge chains against current. Within a decade, half of Mississippi River transport runs on diesel. Steam whistles fade from the river soundscape, replaced by diesel's characteristic knock, that sharp, metallic rhythm caused by compression ignition's explosive nature. Railroad companies experiment with diesel locomotives. The applications seem perfect. Long-distance transport where fuel efficiency matters critically, routes where coal refueling infrastructure might not exist, operations where crews prefer not to shovel fuel manually. But early diesel locomotives prove unreliable. The engines work beautifully at steady speeds but struggle with the constant load variations railroad service demands. It will take decades before diesel locomotives replace steam on railways. Rudolf's patents expire in 1913. For 15 years, he has collected royalties on every diesel engine built. The income makes him wealthy, though not as wealthy as he imagined. Legal battles consume much of his royalty income. Companies dispute what technologies his patents actually cover. Some simply build engines and refuse payment, forcing Rudolf into court. The patent expiration liberates diesel technology. Any company can now build diesel engines without paying Rudolf. This accelerates adoption without royalty costs. Engines become cheaper, but it devastates Rudolf's finances. He has spent lavishly, assuming royalty income would continue indefinitely. He invested in ventures that failed. He supported relatives who depended on his generosity. With patents expired, his income collapses, just as his expenses remain high. This financial pressure contributes to his final journey aboard the Dresden. He travels to London partly for the Admiralty meeting, yes, but also to negotiate new business arrangements that might restore his finances. He needs income. He needs vindication. He needs the world to remember that while anyone can now build diesel engines, one man made them possible. 20,000 diesel engines operate worldwide when Rudolf vanishes. Each one proves his genius. Each one validates decades of work, years of explosions and failures, moments of triumph snatched from defeat. The engines pump water, generate electricity, propel ships, power machinery. They run in factories and aboard vessels, in power stations and mines, converting fuel to work with efficiency that rewrites industrial economics. But Rudolf himself receives less recognition than his invention. People know diesel engines, not Rudolf Diesel. Companies that build engines rarely mention his name. The technology has become so ubiquitous that its origin fades from memory. This frustrates Rudolf deeply. He created this revolution, yet others profit from it while he struggles with debt. Consider the irony. An engine that transforms civilization's power generation leaves its inventor financially pressured, professionally marginalized, personally compressed between forces that recognize what he achieved, but not who achieved it. The principle spreads worldwide. The man who discovered it vanishes into the English Channel. Yet every diesel engine running anywhere represents Rudolf's victory. Every compression stroke proves his thermodynamics correct. Every combustion cycle validates his persistence through 123 failures. Every revolution of every diesel crankshaft worldwide speaks his name, whether people remember to say it or not. The engine conquered the world. The man became legend. And the principle that compression alone creates heat sufficient to transform fuel into power became fundamental to industrial civilization, as essential as electricity, as permanent as the conservation laws governing energy itself. Rudolf Diesel gave humanity more efficient power. Humanity took it, used it, transformed itself with it, and forgot to say thank you. But the engines, remember, they pulse with life worldwide, compressing fuel and air exactly as Rudolf calculated during typhoid fever decades ago, proving that ideas outlive their creators and principles transcend the men who discover them. Rudolf Diesel's engine lives on, evolving beyond anything he could have imagined. The compression-ignition principle remains unchanged, air compressed until heat appears, fuel injected at the critical moment, combustion driving pistons, but the execution has transformed into something nearly unrecognizable from those first violent prototypes. Modern diesel engines achieve precision Rudolf never dreamed possible. Fuel injection occurs at 2,000 bar pressure, more than 100 times what Rudolf's engine managed. At these pressures, fuel atomizes into droplets 10 micrometers wide, smaller than human cells, creating mist so fine that combustion becomes almost instantaneous. Computer-controlled injectors open and close in milliseconds, timing injection to fractions of a degree of crankshaft rotation. The combustion chamber itself has evolved dramatically. Rudolf's cylinders were simple cast-iron tubes. Modern diesel pistons feature complex crowns with precision-machined bowls that create swirl patterns in compressed air. The swirl mixes fuel and oxygen at molecular level, ensuring complete combustion. Ceramic coatings protect piston crowns from temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius heat that would melt unprotected steel. Turbochargers add another layer of evolution Rudolf never anticipated. These devices capture exhaust energy and use it to spin compressors at 100,000 revolutions per minute. The compressors force additional air into cylinders, allowing more fuel to burn, multiplying power without enlarging the engine. A modern turbocharged diesel produces 3 times the power of naturally aspirated engines of similar size. The efficiency gains stun even by modern standards. Rudolf's engine achieved 26% thermal efficiency revolutionary in 1897. Modern marine diesels reach 51.7%. More than half of fuel energy converts to mechanical work. This approaches the theoretical Carnot limit, the maximum efficiency thermodynamics allows for heat engines. Rudolf brought diesel from 0 to 26%, A century of engineering added another 25%, creeping asymptotically toward limits physics imposes. These massive marine diesels power global commerce. Container ships crossing oceans, bulk carriers hauling ore and grain, tankers transporting oil nearly all burn diesel fuel in engines the size of buildings. A single marine diesel engine stands 3 stories tall, weighs thousands of tons, produces 100,000 horsepower. Yet it operates with reliability Rudolf would recognize. Compression, injection, combustion, expansion. The principle scales from handheld generators to machines that dwarf locomotives. World War II proves diesel's military value absolutely. German Tiger tanks rumble across battlefields powered by Maybach, diesel engines producing 700 horsepower. The engines provide range. Conventional gasoline tanks cannot match diesel's higher energy density and better efficiency. Mean Tigers can operate hundreds of kilometers from fuel depots. Allied commanders learn to fear the distinctive sound of diesel engines approaching. A deeper, more mechanical rhythm than gasoline engines produce. At sea, diesel submarines evolve into true underwater vessels. World War I U-boats dove tactically, but spent most time on the surface. World War II U-boats remained submerged for weeks, surfacing only briefly to recharge batteries with diesel engines that gulp air hungrily before diving again. The cat-and-mouse game between submarines and anti-submarine forces drives rapid innovation in diesel efficiency, quietness, reliability. Liberty ships, the mass-produced cargo vessels that keep Allied supply lines functioning, use diesel engines almost exclusively. American shipyards build them faster than German U-boats can sink them, partly because diesel's simplicity allows rapid manufacturing. No complex boiler systems. No steam turbines requiring precision machining, just compression-ignition engines that mechanics can assemble from standardized components. After the war, diesel invades automotive, transport. Trucks adopt diesel first. The fuel efficiency matters critically for long-haul freight. A diesel semi-truck achieves twice the fuel economy of gasoline equivalents, transforming trucking economics. By the 1960s, diesel dominates commercial road transport throughout Europe and increasingly in America. Passenger cars prove more difficult. Diesel's advantages, efficiency, durability, fuel economy, compete against disadvantages Rudolf never solved. Diesel engines are heavier than gasoline engines of equivalent power. They produce more noise and vibration. They emit visible black smoke during acceleration. The distinctive diesel knock that Rudolf heard as music sounds crude to car buyers expecting refined gasoline smoothness. Mercedes-Benz breaks through in the 1970s. Their engineers developed the first viable diesel passenger car, quiet enough, smooth enough, powerful enough to compete with gasoline vehicles while achieving 40 miles per gallon. The timing proves perfect. The 1973 oil embargo makes fuel economy suddenly critical. Gas lines wrap around city blocks. Prices triple overnight. Consumers desperate for efficiency embrace diesel despite its compromises. European adoption accelerates. By the 1990s, half of new cars sold in Europe feature diesel engines. Tax policies favor diesel fuel. Environmental regulations focus on carbon dioxide emissions, where diesel's efficiency provides advantage. Manufacturers invest billions developing advanced diesel technology. Direct injection, turbocharging, intercooling, electronic control systems that optimize combustion continuously. Then comes the scandal that nearly destroys diesel's reputation. In 2015, researchers discover that Volkswagen diesel vehicles produce nitrogen oxide emissions 40 times higher during real-world driving than during laboratory testing. The discrepancy seems impossible until investigators find the truth. Software detects testing conditions and modifies engine operation to reduce emissions artificially. On dynamometers in laboratories, the engines run clean. On roads carrying actual passengers, They pollute massively. The deception spans years and millions of vehicles. Volkswagen engineers programmed the engines to recognize testing procedures, steering angle remaining constant, certain speed patterns, climate control settings typical of testing facilities. When tests are detected, the engine management system switches to clean mode, sacrificing power and efficiency to meet emission standards. When normal driving is detected, the system switches to performance mode, meeting customer expectations while violating environmental laws. The scandal's scope stuns the automotive world. 11 million vehicles worldwide contain the defeat device software. Volkswagen faces billions in fines, lawsuits, criminal charges. Executives resign or face prosecution. The company's reputation collapses. Consumer trust in diesel technology evaporates as people realize they have been breathing toxic emissions unnecessarily for years. Yet diesel persists because the fundamental advantages remain real. The thermodynamics are undeniable. Diesel achieves higher efficiency than gasoline. For heavy transport, for marine applications, for power generation, no practical alternative exists. The scandal forces cleanup, not abandonment. Manufacturers develop selective catalytic reduction systems that inject urea into exhaust streams, converting nitrogen oxides to harmless nitrogen and water. Modern diesels run cleaner than gasoline engines while maintaining efficiency advantages, Rudolf discovered. Innovation continues in unexpected directions. Diesel-powered medical devices keep hearts beating. Ventricular assist devices, mechanical pumps supporting failing hearts, use diesel engine principles adapted to microscale. The pumps compress hydraulic fluid rather than air, but the mechanical proof, the advantage comes from similar principles. Patients awaiting transplants live months or years on these devices, their hearts augmented by machines descended from Rudolf's engine. Mars rovers use diesel generators for power. The Martian atmosphere cannot support combustion, but closed-cycle diesel engines burning stored oxygen can operate in near vacuum. Future Mars missions may use diesel power for extended surface operations, where solar panels prove insufficient. Rudolf's engine, which revolutionized Earth, may power humanity's expansion to other worlds. The most remarkable modern development achieves near-zero emissions through supercritical diesel combustion. By compressing fuel far beyond Rudolf's 35 atmospheres to pressures exceeding 500 atmospheres, engineers create conditions where diesel burns so completely that virtually no pollutants form. The fuel-air mixture exists in supercritical state, where liquid and gas properties merge, allowing molecular-level mixing impossible at normal pressures. Combustion becomes almost theoretical in purity. Hydrocarbons plus oxygen, yielding carbon dioxide and water, with nothing else. These supercritical engines require exotic materials and precise control, but they prove that diesel combustion can be clean. The pollution problems that plagued diesel for decades are not inherent to compression ignition, but artifacts of incomplete combustion at conventional pressures. Rudolf's principle, executed perfectly, produces minimum emissions while maintaining maximum efficiency. Consider how far the evolution has traveled, from Rudolf's laboratory where explosions destroyed prototypes regularly, to modern engines running millions of miles without failure. From hand-calculated compression ratios to computer simulations, modeling combustion at molecular level. From mechanical fuel injection to electronic systems adjusting injection pressure thousands of times per second based on sensor data, Rudolf never imagined. Measuring. Yet the core remains unchanged. Compress air until it becomes hot enough to ignite fuel. Time. The injection precisely. Convert combustion pressure to mechanical motion. Rudolf understood this principle during typhoid fever. Engineers since have merely refined the execution. The diesel engine Rudolf created has become something almost alive. It evolves through engineering selection pressures. Inefficient designs disappear. Successful innovations spread. each generation performs better than the last. The progression resembles biological evolution, accelerated through deliberate design, purposeful mutation, and ruthless selection, creating machines that approach theoretical perfection. 4 billion diesel engines have been manufactured since Rudolf's first prototype. 4 billion machines embodying his insight that compression alone creates transformation. Some ran for minutes before failing. Others operate for decades. Together they have generated more power than any other human invention, enabled more transportation, supported more industry. Rudolf died before seeing most of this evolution. He vanished when diesel engines were just beginning their conquest of transportation and power generation. Had he lived another decade, another 2 decades, would he recognize his creation? Would the electronic controls and turbochargers and ceramic coatings seem like natural evolution or alien transformation? Perhaps it does not matter. The principle is eternal. The execution evolves. Rudolf gave humanity the principle. Humanity has spent a century perfecting the execution. The machines live on, compressing and combusting, proving every moment that pressure creates possibility, that forces bearing down can produce not destruction, but power that drives civilization forward into futures Rudolf could only imagine. The future of compression ignition looks nothing like Rudolf Diesel imagined, yet everything he dreamed. In laboratories worldwide, engineers push his principle toward limits that seem to violate thermodynamics itself. They question assumptions Rudolf never thought to question. They compress fuel in ways that transform combustion into something almost magical. Inside AKT's Power's facilities in San Diego, an engine runs that Rudolf would find incomprehensible. It has no cylinder head. Instead, 2 pistons face each other within a single cylinder, moving toward each other like cosmic collision. Fuel injects between them at the instant they meet. Compression occurs from both directions simultaneously, creating pressures and temperatures impossible with conventional single-piston designs. The opposed piston configuration eliminates the cylinder head entirely, that component which caused Rudolf so much trouble, which shattered during early tests, which must withstand combustion forces while sealing absolutely. Without a head, thermal losses decrease dramatically. Combustion heat cannot escape through head surfaces because no head exists. Nearly all energy remains in the cylinder, driving pistons outward with efficiency that approaches 70%. 70%. Consider that number. Rudolf achieved 26% and revolutionized industry. Modern diesels reach 51% and seem to approach theoretical limits. A Charter's opposed piston design adds another 20% by eliminating components Rudolf thought essential. The engine proves that compression ignition has room for evolution. Rudolf never imagined that his principle can be executed in configurations he never considered. The opposed piston design also runs cleaner. Combustion occurs in the center of the cylinder, where temperatures peak. The fuel-air mixture burns completely before touching cooler cylinder walls where incomplete combustion produces emissions. The result? Near zero particulate matter, minimal nitrogen oxides, efficiency that makes even modern diesels seem wasteful. Mazda pursues different revolution with their Skyactiv X engine. They compress gasoline fuel, yes. Gasoline, not diesel until it ignites from compression heat alone. This sounds impossible. Gasoline ignites at lower temperatures than diesel, causing knock and pre-ignition that destroy conventional engines. But Mazda engineers control the compression so precisely, mix fuel and air so homogeneously, that gasoline ignites gently rather than detonating. The result combines advantages of both engine types: gasoline's cleaner combustion plus diesel's compression ignition efficiency. The engine achieves 45% thermal efficiency while meeting stringent emission standards without heavy catalytic systems. It proves that Rudolf's principle applies beyond diesel fuel. that compression ignition represents universal concept rather than fuel-specific technology. This homogeneous charge compression ignition HCCI has been theoretical goal for decades. Getting fuel and air mixed perfectly, then compressing the mixture until it ignites simultaneously throughout the cylinder, requires control impossible until recently. Computer processors analyzing sensor data thousands of times per second, adjusting injection timing and compression ratios continuously, make HCCI practical finally. Rudolf calculated with pencil and paper. Modern engineers calculate with silicon thinking faster than human consciousness. But perhaps the most revolutionary development returns to Rudolf's earliest experiments: vegetable oil fuel. Rudolf demonstrated his engine running on peanut oil in 1897. He envisioned farmers growing fuel, achieving energy independence, distributing power generation locally. For a century, this vision seemed quaint. Petroleum was too cheap, too convenient, too established to displace. Climate change resurrects Rudolf's vegetable oil dreams. Carbon dioxide from fossil fuels accumulates in atmosphere, warming the planet, forcing civilization to reconsider energy sources. Biofuels suddenly become not quaint experiments but necessary alternatives. Rudolf's peanut oil demonstration proves prophetic. Modern biodiesel production exceeds anything Rudolf imagined. Algae farms in open ponds or closed photobioreactors produce 10,000 gallons of oil per acre, annually 50 times what traditional crops achieve. The algae consume carbon dioxide while growing, making the fuel carbon neutral. Burning it releases only carbon the algae captured previously. Some facilities locate algae farms adjacent to power plants, feeding the algae exhaust carbon dioxide that would otherwise enter atmosphere. Waste cooking oil becomes valuable fuel feedstock. Restaurants that once paid for oil disposal now sell used oil to biodiesel producers. Chemical processes remove food particles and convert triglycerides to fuel-identical molecules. Cities run bus fleets on biodiesel made from restaurant waste, closing loops Rudolf would appreciate. Food cooked with oil recycled to fuel powering transport that delivers more food. The most remarkable development uses genetically modified bacteria that excrete diesel fuel molecules directly. These engineered organisms consume sugar and produce hydrocarbons identical to petroleum diesel. They are living refineries, converting plant matter to fuel through biological processes. The bacteria grow in vats, multiply exponentially, produce fuel continuously. Harvesting requires simple filtration. The fuel needs no further processing, it is chemically identical to fossil diesel. This represents compression ignition's ultimate expression. Biology, creating diesel fuel through cellular metabolism, proving Rudolf's intuition that his engine connects to fundamental principles life already uses. The bacteria compress chemical energy into molecular structures that release energy explosively when compressed again in diesel cylinders. Nature and engineering converge exactly as Rudolf sensed they must. Hydrogen injection adds another. Evolution. Pure hydrogen burns cleanly, producing only water vapor. But hydrogen engines face problems: low energy density, difficult storage, expensive infrastructure. Diesel-hydrogen dual-fuel engines solve these issues elegantly. They inject small amounts of hydrogen, just 2% of total fuel along with diesel. The hydrogen transforms combustion completely. Hydrogen ignites at lower temperatures than diesel, starting combustion earlier and more completely. The result? Diesel fuel burns 90% cleaner, while producing 15% more power. The hydrogen acts as combustion catalyst, enabling diesel to burn with efficiency and cleanliness impossible otherwise. This dual-fuel approach requires minimal modification to existing engines, just hydrogen injection systems added to conventional diesel infrastructure. Some researchers pursue synthetic diesel, made from atmospheric carbon dioxide. The process captures carbon dioxide from air, combines it with hydrogen from water electrolysis using renewable electricity, and produces synthetic diesel molecules chemically identical to petroleum diesel. The fuel is carbon neutral. Burning it releases only carbon captured during production. Large-scale facilities in Norway and Germany produce synthetic diesel at $3 per gallon currently, with costs dropping as production scales. This completes a remarkable cycle. Fossil diesel comes from ancient plants that captured solar energy millions of years ago, compressed by geological processes into hydrocarbon deposits. Synthetic diesel captures solar energy today through photovoltaics, uses that energy to convert air and water into fuel, then releases the energy through compression, ignition. Rudolf's engine becomes bridge between ancient sunlight and modern sustainability. The most speculative developments occur at quantum scale. Researchers at MIT manipulate combustion chamber surfaces with nanostructured coatings that affect molecular behavior during compression. The structures are smaller than wavelengths of visible light, creating surface properties impossible with conventional materials. Early experiments suggest these nanosurfaces reduce heat loss during compression, increase combustion completeness, enable efficiencies that challenge classical thermodynamic assumptions. Some scientists propose that quantum effects become significant at the extreme pressures modern diesel engines achieve. At 2000 bar injection pressure, molecular bonds compress enough that quantum mechanical behavior influences combustion. The compression creates conditions found elsewhere only in stellar cores, where matter behaves according to quantum rather than classical physics. If this proves true, future diesel engines might exploit quantum effects deliberately, achieving efficiencies current theory considers impossible. These developments would astonish Rudolf, yet each follows logically from his principle. He proved compression transforms. Engineers, since, have discovered how many ways compression can transform, how many configurations can exploit the principle, how far the concept extends beyond his original vision. Consider the progression. Rudolf's 35 atmospheres seemed revolutionary. Modern engines reach 2,000 atmospheres routinely. Opposed piston designs promise even higher pressures. Each increase brings efficiency closer to theoretical limits, makes combustion cleaner, proves Rudolf's principle has room for evolution he never anticipated. The compression itself becomes the constant. Everything else, fuel type, combustion chamber design, injection methods, control systems, evolves continuously. But the fundamental insight persists. Compress matter until it transforms. Apply enough pressure at the right moment and energy releases explosively, orderly, predictably. This truth Rudolf discovered remains true regardless of how engineers execute it. Tomorrow's diesel engines may run on algae, oil, hydrogen blends, or synthetic fuel made from captured carbon. They may use opposed pistons, homogeneous charge ignition, or quantum-enhanced combustion. They may achieve efficiencies Rudolf thought impossible, emit virtually zero pollution, operate in applications he never considered, but they will all compress. They will all transform pressure into power. They will all prove that Rudolf Diesel discovered something eternal, a principle as fundamental as gravity, as permanent as conservation of energy, as applicable to future technologies as to past innovations. The engines evolve. The principle endures. Compression creates transformation. Pressure produces power. Forces bearing down generate not destruction but controlled violence that drives civilization forward. Rudolf stood at the beginning of this journey, calculating compression ratios while burning with fever, building engines that exploded before they ran, proving through persistence that his impossible dream was merely difficult. Engineers since have travelled further along the path he blazed, discovering vistas he never glimpsed, achieving efficiencies he never thought possible. But every innovation honours his insight. Every advancement proves his principle. Every new diesel engine, regardless of configuration or fuel or application, compresses air until transformation occurs. That moment of ignition, fuel combusting spontaneously from compression heat alone, validates Rudolf Diesel's genius across more than a century of evolution. The future belongs to compression, and compression forever belongs to the man who vanished into the English Channel, but left behind a principle as immortal as the forces governing the universe itself. Return with me to the English Channel on a September night in 1913. The water flows dark and cold, keeping its secrets as it has for millennia. But something has changed since Rudolf Diesel vanished beneath these waves. The channel itself has become testament to his legacy. Ferries cross daily, their diesel engines throbbing steadily, burning fuel with efficiency Rudolf proved possible. The passengers aboard rarely think about the engines below deck, never consider the man who made their journey possible. They read, sleep, watch horizons, unaware that every revolution of the propeller shafts honors a genius who disappeared into these same waters. Beneath the ferries, submarines patrol depths Rudolf never imagined exploring. Nuclear submarines run on atomic power, yes, but conventional submarines still use diesel engines when surfaced. Compression, ignition, providing range and reliability for fleets worldwide. The principle Rudolf carried to his meeting with the British Admiralty powers vessels beneath the waters that claimed him, and in those waters themselves, dispersed through currents that flow between Atlantic and North Sea, Rudolf's atoms continue their eternal cycle. The body the Dutch pilot boat found and returned to the sea has long since dissolved. Calcium from his bones has incorporated into shells of countless organisms. Carbon from his tissues has cycled through fish and plankton. Hydrogen and oxygen have evaporated and rained down again, perhaps falling on the decks of ships burning the fuel he perfected. This dispersion seems like ending, but it is transformation. Rudolf understood cycles. He studied thermodynamics where energy never disappears, only changes form. He built engines that convert chemical energy to mechanical work, proving transformation is fundamental to existence. His own transformation from body to dispersed atoms follows laws he knew intimately. 21st century evidence cast new light on that September night. Swiss banking records declassified decades later show no unusual transactions suggesting suicide planning. Rudolf's accounts were troubled, yes, but not desperate. Men planning suicide rarely withdraw 10,000 marks and make careful business arrangements. The financial pressure was real, but not immediately catastrophic. British intelligence files, finally released after a century of secrecy, confirm Rudolf's Admiralty meeting was considered strategically critical. Britain wanted diesel submarine technology. Germany wanted to prevent technology transfer to potential enemies. Multiple intelligence agencies tracked Rudolf's movements. German military intelligence knew about the meeting. British intelligence anticipated his arrival. Oceanographic models analyzing currents and body decomposition patterns suggest the location where the Dutch boat found Rudolf's remains matches murder better than suicide. A body entering the water from the Dresden's deck would likely have drifted differently than the actual discovery location indicates. The models are not conclusive, too many variables, too much time elapsed, but they raise questions previous investigations never asked. Did someone confront Rudolf after dinner? Did German agents aboard the Dresden intercept him before he could share submarine engine knowledge with Britain? The evidence is circumstantial, the conclusions uncertain. We cannot know definitively what happened on that dark deck, but we can calculate probabilities, analyze patterns, understand that Rudolf Diesel died surrounded by forces that had reason to want him silenced. Perhaps it does not matter ultimately. Rudolf's death, however it occurred, changed nothing about his achievement. The principle survived him. The engines outlived him. His genius became immortal regardless of whether he jumped, fell, or was pushed into the channel's cold waters. Consider his true impact through numbers that stagger comprehension. 4 billion diesel engines manufactured since his first prototype, 4 billion machines embodying his insight that compression creates transformation. If we could gather them all in one place, their combined mass would exceed the Great Pyramid of Giza thousands of times over. These engines generate 15% of global electricity. In power stations worldwide, diesel generators provide backup power, peak load capacity, remote area electricity. When storms knock out transmission lines, diesel engines keep hospitals running, water pumping, communications functioning. The reliability Rudolf built into his design, mechanical simplicity, fuel efficiency, minimal maintenance, makes diesel ideal for critical applications where failure means disaster. 90% of heavy transport uses diesel power. Cargo ships crossing oceans, locomotives hauling freight, trucks moving goods. Cross-country nearly all burn diesel fuel in engines descended from Rudolf's prototype. Global commerce depends on compression ignition. The food on your table, the products in stores, the materials that built your home, all traveled via diesel at some point in their journey to you. Calculate the fuel savings. Diesel's 30 to 50% efficiency versus steam's 9% means Rudolf's invention has saved approximately 2 trillion gallons of fuel compared to steam alternatives. 2 trillion gallons. That is more than all proven oil reserves in Saudi Arabia. The efficiency Rudolf achieved has conserved resources on scale that reshaped global energy economics. His vegetable oil experiments in 1897 now power modern biodiesel industries producing billions of gallons annually. The demonstration Rudolf performed, his engine running on peanut oil, seemed like curiosity then. Today, it is blueprint for renewable fuel infrastructure, reducing fossil fuel dependence. Rudolf proved vegetable oils work in diesel engines. Engineers today exploit that proof to combat climate change. His social writings about technology, democratizing power, find expression in distributed generation. Small diesel generators provide electricity to billions of people beyond grid infrastructure. Remote villages, isolated communities, developing regions all access modern amenities through diesel power. Rudolf envisioned this democratization. It has happened exactly as he imagined, though petroleum companies rather than local farmers control fuel supply. His vision of compression ignition, achieving maximum thermodynamic efficiency, approaches realization. Modern diesel engines reaching 51% efficiency stand close to the Carnot cycle's theoretical limit. Each efficiency improvement required decades of engineering, billions in research investment, countless innovations in materials and control systems. But the trajectory points toward Rudolf's dream: engines that extract maximum possible work from every unit of fuel burned. The irony cuts deeply. Rudolf feared his invention would be suppressed by coal interests, by steam engine manufacturers, by forces resisting change. He died, possibly murdered by those very forces. Yet compression ignition not only survived but conquered. The coal industry collapsed. Steam engines became museum pieces. Diesel transformed civilization exactly as Rudolf predicted, while he transformed into legend. His diary's mysterious cross marks the intersection where man becomes myth. The Rudolf who stepped aboard the Dresden was human troubled by debt, pressured by circumstances, facing uncertain future. The Rudolf Diesel we remember is something larger, symbol of innovation triumphing over adversity, persistence overcoming failure, genius proving itself against skepticism. But focus not on the man or the myth, focus on the principle. Compression transforms. Apply sufficient pressure at the right moment, and matter changes state, releases energy, becomes something new. This truth transcends Rudolf Diesel. He discovered it, proved it, gave it to humanity. But the truth existed before him and will exist after every diesel engine finally stops running. Thermodynamics cares nothing for human drama. The laws Rudolf exploited operate regardless of whether he died by suicide, accident, or murder. Compression raises temperature, whether Rudolf's atoms disperse through the channel or not. Fuel ignites at specific pressures, whether we remember his name or forget it. Yet we should remember. Not because Rudolf needs recognition, he is beyond such concerns, dispersed through cycles he understood scientifically. We should remember because his story illustrates transformation's price. Creating something revolutionary requires enduring pressures that would crush lesser spirits. Building the impossible demands, accepting failures that would convince others to quit. Changing civilization means standing at edges where force is powerful enough to kill press from every direction. Rudolf stood at those edges repeatedly. Poverty compressed his childhood. Displacement compressed his adolescence. Illness nearly compressed him to death. Industrial resistance compressed his finances. Political forces compressed him between nations preparing for war. Each pressure made him denser, harder, more capable of bearing weight until he achieved compression ratios no one thought possible. Then the pressures finally exceeded even his capacity to withstand them. Something broke. Something transformed. Whether he chose the transformation or had it forced upon him, Rudolf Diesel changed state that September night, from solid presence to dispersed memory, from living engineer to eternal principle. The engines remember even if people forget. Every compression stroke honors him. Every combustion cycle proves his genius. Every revolution of every diesel crankshaft worldwide speaks his name in mechanical language. Compression, ignition, expansion, exhaust. The rhythm repeats billions of times per second globally, a heartbeat driving civilization forward, powered by principle Rudolf Diesel discovered. Stand on the Dover cliffs overlooking the channel. Watch ferries cross, their diesel engines invisible but present in the steady progress through waves. Listen for submarines running submerged, their diesel generators charging batteries for silent patrol. Consider the atoms dispersed through water below. Rudolf's physical form scattered but not destroyed, transformed but not lost. He believed compression creates rather than destroys. His life proved it. His death proved it. His engines prove it daily. Pressure builds. Forces accumulate. Something must give. And in that moment of transformation, when everything seems about to break, new possibilities emerge. Rudolf Diesel gave us more than efficient engines. He gave us proof that pressure transforms, that forces bearing down create opportunity for change, that compression executed precisely produces not destruction, but power. The principle is immortal. The engines are eternal. And somewhere in the channel's flowing waters, scattered among currents that connect past to present, Rudolf Diesel's atoms continue their journey, cycling through systems he understood better than almost anyone, proving through dispersion what his engines prove through compression, that transformation is the only constant, that pressure creates possibility, and that principles outlive the men who discover them. The diesel engine pulses with life worldwide. Rudolf Diesel transformed into legend, and compression ignition, that beautiful, violent, efficient conversion of pressure to power, remains as fundamental to human civilization as fire itself, burning in billions of cylinders, proving every instant that one man's impossible dream became humanity's indispensable reality.